Hello, I'm CraftyAndy, and this is Crafty Arts, where we art. The piece that you are going to witness today comes with a story of personal struggles that me and my first husband went through before coming across our second. As I share the experience with you, it should be pretty obvious the moments where a lot of luck was involved and on our side. This is not a I can do it and so can you kind of story. This is not a call for sympathy or a competition of scars. This is just me sharing some experience. A time of struggle, in fact, in many ways, still a struggle. However, this period of our lives was particularly impactful.
Our years of hell. This piece of art you are witnessing is a representation of going through struggles. It all started for us when we moved in together. It was me and my later-to-be first husband, Neshoba, living in a cold basement of his stepbrother's house in a small village up north in Michigan. Leroy, Michigan. Just me and Neshoba freezing our asses off during the day and night, in summer and winter. He was attending college and working there while I was working midnights at Walmart, picking up a second job whenever I could. With both of our incomes and our average pay of minimum wage at the time, which was about $7, I figured we only had about $200 a month after trying to budget for things like gas and food. So you can figure that if anything happened, a car breaking down, a medical event, we certainly didn't have the cash for it, and we didn't have the credit for it either. My first crash out would come one day when I was doing a double shift. See, at one point I was working a sawmill in the morning at 8 a.m. to 2, and then I would get about 4 to 5 hours and then have to go into Walmart and work until morning there from 10 p.m. to 6. So the majority of days during the week were just eaten up by me sleeping for some hours and then working, and that was it. Already, I was feeling sucked dry from the grind, not being able to have any time to draw or make videos or have just leisure time. I was also in the process of consolidating a bunch of credit card debt that I obtained through food, college books, and just dumb spending. My future husband comes home one day after going to school and work, and I'm just here bawling my eyes out, wanting my life back, and him feeling responsible for it. On top of the hours I was working, I was seeing a lot of the money that we're making just being sucked up by the debt consolidation. We were paying about $300 a month for that, and so I decided this isn't worth it, and I'm going to cancel it and just ignore the credit cards. And so I did. Thankfully, though, the amount was small enough, I believe it was just under $10,000, that they didn't bother with courts or gouging wages. They just sent it through collections. I got hounded with things in the mail for about 8 years or so, and then they just went away. And the same companies later would just offer me credit cards again. I don't know if it would work that way today. Probably not advisable, depending on how old you are. But being in your mid-20s and just starting life, apparently with just a small amount, despite the damage it does to your credit, eventually it just went away in my case. All in all, it was just a opportunity of just growing up, being on my own, going off into the deep end. Could have used a little more help, could have used a little more advice perhaps, maybe secure a better job, who knows. Hindsight is 20/20. So I was a prime target when it came to pursuing any opportunity to get out of that hole we were in. So when I soon got a call to do an interview for a sales job, I took it. Despite how much I despised sales, despite how much I hated the concept of sales and having to talk to strangers and sell product, I took it. I'll get into the details of the sales job at another time. So to make it short, I took some classes in insurance sales and regulations, took the state exam, and after 2 attempts, I passed and became a certified state insurance agent. The job required us to work 2 days out of the week, making phone calls to set up appointments with potential clients. 3 days of driving to those appointments and seeing if we can close a sale. This was a 100% commission base. That means if you don't sell, you don't eat. At the start, we would be partnered up with our hiring manager, which is good because at that time I was driving this Tempo, and yes, that is a troll face painted on the hood. It doesn't take much brain power to figure out in a professional suit-wearing sales business that would not fly, especially since the work focused on seniors of 55 to 75 years of age. Are you fucking kidding? I can only imagine what the looks would have been. I made sure to park that thing in a dark corner of the parking lot so my boss didn't comment on it. It was a struggle from the start, having to survive on $250 a week. But after a little negotiating with our landlord, I managed to hold out and start getting some sizable commissions paid out. Thing is, it was around when my troll car died. Fuel pump failed. It wasn't getting gas, so with no money to fix it, I turned it over and now we only have one vehicle between me and my husband. So this is our routine, Tuesdays and Fridays. Get up, 5 a.m. Get my husband 28 miles south to the college, 30-minute drive. He didn't start work there until 8, so he gets roughly 2 hours to do fuck all until then. I would immediately have to start driving up to Traverse City, which is now an hour-and-a-half drive for 90 miles. Now our work was scheduled to have a meeting at 8 a.m. to be on the phones from 9 to 5, selling people on making appointments with us. Remember, we don't get paid hourly for this either. However, we were required to reach an appointment goal of 10 on Tuesdays and 5 on Fridays. If we did not reach this goal by 5 p.m., we were required to be there until we reach that goal or until 9 p.m. My husband's classes and work schedule ends at 3 p.m., so he would be stuck there at the college or sitting at a restaurant with only an iPad to keep busy with. Uber and Lyft didn't exist back then, and even if it did, we would not be able to afford the cost to bring him home every day. Many times I wasn't getting there until 10 p.m. to pick him up, making it a good 6 to 8 hours he'd be stuck down there. We would then drive home and then immediately have to go to bed in order to wake up in the morning for the rest of the week and those Tuesdays and Fridays. Things were not much different the other 3 days of the week. Ideally, our first appointment with a potential client was 9 a.m., so a little more leeway, but I'm still having to drop off my husband at Big Rapids, driving hundreds of miles to meet up with my work partner. On a good productive day, meetings with clients might have us ending the workday at 6 p.m. Other times, appointments run later. My latest time was 11 p.m. Now, we would be all over the place up north in towns like Everett, or as far as Empire, adding more drive time to pick up my husband so we could go home and sleep. We spent more time together in the car and bed than at together for the next year and a half. We managed to scrounge up funds and move out of the house into our own place in Cadillac, Michigan, with the help of my husband's dad. I got a new setup and got a wonderful new house. Look at this. Look at this setup. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Hi, honey. Oh yeah. Look at that. Oh wow. Money overall was a constant struggle still. Some weeks I got $800. Some weeks it was $50. And many other weeks it was $0. Appearances had to be kept up. Hygiene and keeping the clothes clean at the laundromats took more free time. If I failed to reach an appointment goal on Friday, I was required to drive into the office on Saturday to try and reach it, making it a 6-day work week for only the potential of making money from sales. Oh, and I almost forgot. Every month, to help cover the bills of the lease regarding the office that we worked at, the materials and applications, all insurance agents and managers were required to pay a $250 office expense fee to our vice and president of our place of work. I had no time to whine or complain. We ended up selling our Wii U, thank God we got rid of that while it was still hot, our graphics cards, some McFarlane Dragons I had before I moved up, keeping up with the overdrawn bank accounts, late bills. It was getting all kinds of ugly. During this entire period, if there was any major issues with our car, we would have been fucked. And there was a few that almost did. We were driving that Kia to the point where the tires were starting to bald. And we had an incident where we took it to the only reliable auto shop in the city. They offered me to either get 4 used tires for less money or 2 new tires. And I figured, well, it makes more sense to get the 2 new tires to start, even though they're more money because they'll last longer in the long run. Well, turns out that was a mistake, as my husband brought it up, that all those tires were balding, and they were balding. Like, you could start seeing the metal coming out from the treads. They were just completely gone. So I left a message with the mechanic telling him to just put the used tires on. They did not. And I had to work that day, so I signed off on it. We would spend the entire night arguing and going over how I was going to confront the mechanic that next morning about putting the used tires on there like we wanted, because they would not take back the 2 new tires since I drove off and drove on them already. And the reason I signed off on it was because I didn't want to have another day where I was possibly not making any money. So ultimately, we ended up taking the hour trip to Traverse City and having a different tire shop replace the balding tires with 2 used ones. This was all coordinated throughout the workday with my work partner that time, in between appointments. It's just incredible to me how a relationship can be so strained because of the anxiety of your finances. But when you live in a country where it's either work or die, I guess it fits. If I were to put a number on it, I'd say 90% of the stress involving our early years in our relationship was just financial related. And off the cuff, I don't know what to make of that. I just think it's kind of fucked up. But I guess everything else is how we're able to overcome it in the long run and move on from it. Because as my parents put it, who have been together for over 40 years now, when you marry someone, or marry more than one someone in my case, you're marrying your best friend. During one of my first relationships, my mom told me one night that she sees my dad as her best friend and my dad sees her as his best friend. And it makes total sense to me, because you're living with this. If you're going to be married to someone and living with them forever, it better be someone that you relate to in terms of taste, values, and just being able to trust each other enough to communicate fully with the other person. As I've seen a lot of relationships fail, the key factor in a lot of it is just the partner hiding things, or just being dismissive or unable to empathize with the other person when they're having a bad time. But coming from there, we started to reach a little bit more of a higher point. And I remember the day the next incident happened, I was thinking, yeah, things are looking good now. Things are going great. And then I got a phone call 2 minutes later as my husband went to Big Rapids to go to work. The hood latch failed and the windshield was smashed and roof dented in. Our poor Kia, the cup holders would fill up with rainwater from then on. The deductible on our insurance was way too high because, again, money problems. So we just ended up paying it out of pocket. Even after the windshield got fixed, the dent on the roof was still there, so the car continued to leak anytime it rained. Don't even get me started on snow and ice, and having no vehicle for several days, relying on coworkers to come take me to the office. Still, within the week, we recovered, and we were back to our normal routine of getting up at 5 a.m., driving down to Big Rapids to drop Neshoba off, and then me driving an hour and a half up to Traverse City. And this went on for about 9 months, up until Neshoba graduated college with his psychology degree, before he quit the job there to join me in this venture in insurance commission sales. He passed the exam first try, and we started to make very little headway still. Because of course we did. This is a network marketing company relying on sales and draining every dime you have, with only the ones on top making bank and a lucky few below them. The only difference between this and many other network marketing companies was that this did not focus on recruitment. In fact, you could not even recruit other agents on your team until you survived on your own for at least a year, working with other agents as partners and under your training manager, who also paid to have you on their team. My husband was always more social with people, and he was keeping in touch with friends that we had and making new ones all the time. Through that kind of networking, he managed to find someone that could help him get an actual job in the tech field, something he initially was interested in before psychology. The catch was that it was in Ohio. I told him to take it. This could be our way out of this poor area with no real opportunities in sight. Aside from this sales job, our only other options was either retail, restaurant duty, or some other odd job, contract-based job that involves a lot of heavy lifting and machine working. After getting him down there in Ohio, I was now on my own in Cadillac, Michigan. I didn't want to move everything down there with no job of my own yet. There was a really big payout happening that month too. Because I was able to help close a deal where we rolled a senior's assets out of the market into a indexed annuity fund, guaranteeing them some kind of return every year and no losses when the market has a downturn, I earned my little golf shirt. Isn't that nice? Look at it. I still hang on to it for that sentimental value and the memories of possibly the best worst job I've ever had. The commission sale totaled out to about $13,000. Except it would take 3 weeks to pay out, and I had next to no other business lined up. There was absolutely no fucking money left. Our bank account was so overdrawn, it got closed out that week. I was expecting the payout, and so I had to scramble and open up a new bank account, leaving me with $20 to live on. I was just done asking for help. I felt like a loser. In fact, I consider myself a loser at that point. And I lived in an area where almost everyone else was just getting by. No one was on any kind of like higher level in terms of finances. So there's no way in hell I could have asked any of my even local friends at the time for help. We were all fucking struggling as far as I was concerned. I should also mention that up until this point, there was a number of occasions that one of my best friends lent out some money to me in order to save my ass. And so did my parents early on when I moved out. Thing is though, it's extremely hard for me to ask for help in that way. And I got sick of doing it. I just said to myself, living alone, if I fall and fail and become homeless at this point and I can't afford the bills, so be it. Let's see how this plays out. So with my little $20 and trying to last throughout the week, here I am trying to tread water in the deep end. I'm well aware too that another point of privilege to mention is that I have parents that would have gladly taken me back in if it got to that point, but I also felt at the same time that I wasn't going to ask for any of their help anymore. So if I ended up on the street, then so be it. I certainly wasn't going to swindle or scam or cheat being in my sales position either. I told my manager one day when she was sharing stories with me about agents who try to cut corners or lie, and I just said, why not just quit then? If you're gonna, I'd rather just quit than to start going down that path. So I mentioned again, sink or swim. This was it. My friend Bandit came by with a big bag full of leftover turkey from his family reunion, and that was my first source of sustenance. I held on to it to the point it was turning gray. I took my chances picking out the good parts to eat. When I no longer felt I could take the risk, I had to ration out progressive soups as my meals and a gallon of milk. It was a particularly dark period for us both. The friend Nash was staying with had a rather strong verbal temper, and you see, the dark fact was, when my husband moved down there in Ohio, there was no job waiting for him like he thought there was. The person that took him in was also just in the middle of contracts. He did eventually get a job, but for 2 weeks he had no work, and I didn't find out until later because he was embarrassed over this fact. The person that took us in, we'll just call him Bob, was under the impression that Neshoba was going to be a potential boyfriend, and when he made it clear that wasn't going to happen, that's when the sparks started coming out of Bob. Very short-tempered, very fly off the handle, verbally abusive. At the same time, very lenient on rent when we moved in. In fact, I would say he mellowed out when it was me and one other person that was also living there. That's a longtime friend of ours. And it's just one of those points where, once again, how many which ways could have things went wrong, right? How many bad decisions could have been made? And there were not any spare funds to help either of us out for the time. I was looking up ways to accidentally forget to pay for gas and filling up my car. I couldn't afford insurance. I couldn't afford registration. It's so fucking ridiculous. It's winter, and I'm working a job that has me driving hundreds of miles a day with no insurance and an expired registration on my vehicle. And I have a fucking swelling cyst on the roof of my mouth, causing me to be unable to eat big bites of food. I could barely open my mouth for Cheerios. Any further, and it would just start causing serious pain. Working a job that required me to talk to clients on top of that. One night, coming home, I got pulled over by a copper. In the middle of writing up a ticket for no proof of insurance and registration, the cyst in my mouth popped. I didn't want to open my door and spit out a bunch of shit in front of a cop, so I just swallowed the salty goodness. The bright side is I got functionality back in my mouth and I didn't need to see a doctor. I couldn't afford to see a doctor and have him drain it. The bad side was I still had to go to court. A day I was required to meet up with a work partner 40 miles in another town was the day I learned how much you can stretch a gas tank with a manual transmission. I left many hours earlier than necessary so that I could go the minimum speed limit on the highway, going into neutral in order to coast on those downhill portions. I had to borrow money from my partner that day in order to afford gas to get me back home. It was embarrassing being pushed into a manager position at the insurance job because I was there for over a year now, but I could see the floor falling out from under this whole operation. Clients were not getting set up by a lot of people. Sales were slowing down a shitload. There's no fucking way I'm sticking around with this constant struggle. Always on, never being able to slow down and have time to think. Always going 100%, let alone keeping up with videos and artwork I wanted to make. I got one painting done over the course of 2 years. Then the payout happened. And you think 13 grand is a lot? Well, not when you have a $4,000 overdraft at the bank caused by bounced checks, electronic rejections from PayPal, needing to put a down payment on a new car, also getting my husband his own computer since I took his. I bought insurance for the vehicle, paid for registration, and luckily, when I had to meet with the city prosecutor, she dropped the case against me after seeing everything was taken care of. Paid back some of the money one of my best friends loaned out to help get us by, and within the weekend, it was all gone. All of it. Just like that, in one weekend. It was all but nearly gone. I still had some sizable payouts coming, but until then, that was that. My one and only manager meeting consisted of one of them asking me, what the hell do I do with my money?
You just had a huge payout and it's all gone?
Thankfully, she got interrupted before I had to try to bullshit an answer.
During this monthly time I was living alone too, I would make the 6-hour trip with the Kia to Ohio, Columbus, to visit my husband over the weekends. Sometimes I could make it, sometimes I couldn't, and then I would have to make the trip midday Sunday in order to get home for a reasonable night's sleep. At one point I was so exhausted driving home that I was dozing off and almost hit a deer. I spun out of control and smashed a headlight on the front of the Kia. So not only do we have leaks coming in from the roof, now there's leaks filling up in the broken left headlight. The trips down there were also to take job interviews, which nearly drained all hope from me.
Because insurance sales was on my resume, that was the bulk of the offers I got. Fucking sales. And more network marketing jobs. Network marketing jobs up the ass because this is around a major city of Columbus. It was a goddamn nightmare. I nearly broke when I interviewed for H.H. Gregg, which was a retail store focused on appliances and beds, only to find out that they don't pay hourly either and work on the draw system. The draw system, for those who don't know, works like this. Say you work 1 week in H.H. Gregg, and this is a 6-day work week, by the way. That's right, a 6-day work week, not being paid hourly, being paid by the draw system. You have to sell either a mattress or a washer, dryer, whatever section you're in. So let's say you sell a mattress for $1,000. The store makes it $200. You get $800 worth of commission that week. Great, you made $800 that week. Now let's say you have a week where you don't make any sales at all. Okay, well they'll pay you minimum wage of like $250 for a 6-day work week. And then let's say the next week you make another $1,000 sale. $800 commission. Well, thing is, That $250 that they paid you the week you didn't make any sales, that was not for free. You have to pay that back. In fact, if you quit the job before paying that back, they would actually go after you through collections to get that back too. So you have to pay that back, and instead, you make $550 instead of your $800. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that fantastic? I left that interview thinking to myself, this is hell. This is fucking hell. I'm never going to escape this fucking weird commission sales bullshit that just does nothing but drain all your energy and ultimately just makes you constantly either on the verge of famine or feast. Needless to say, after I made the 6-hour trip home that day, I was kind of miserable. With few exceptions, every job interview I did involved either door-to-door sales, selling businesses private electricity, however the fuck that would work, air conditionings, or filters, or sales packages, you name it. There were nights I was looking up ways to fucking kill myself. I wasn't talking to anyone about our current struggles either. Me and my husband, Neshoba, were both stressed out to the point we couldn't share our grievances with each other. The relationship was going to be strained for a while during this transition period. We got lucky once again though. A call center was looking for workers and I got the position there, working at the same call center bank that closed my account for overdraft. The next day I walked into the insurance office the last time and told them straight to my manager and the branch president and his vice that I'm leaving. It is ironic that just a month prior I said this is what I want to do. I meant it then, but seeing a way out, being asked, can I picture myself doing this insurance sales job for another 5 to 10 years? And the answer was no. It was the only time I broke down after leaving a job. It was like getting out of an intense, abusive relationship. All the stress that comes with not knowing if you are going to make money that week, if your car is going to hold out, if your health is going to stay together. All those times I had to keep face and pretend everything was fine when I talked to my coworkers and clients, and that we were all doing fine. All that veneer that I had to put over myself was gone. I could finally get back to an hourly paid work schedule that was above minimum wage. There was finally time to think again. I used to joke that a nuke could go off in Detroit and I likely wouldn't know about it. I do follow some of the former coworkers I had there, including the vice president. And since I left over 10 years ago now, they've changed the company name at least 2 times that I'm aware of. So who knows how much they've had to pivot and change the business focus in order to just keep that hustle going. I know a lot of the business that we are dealing in had residuals, but ultimately, unless you are on the tippy top of that type of business, they even told us 9 out of 10 people will fail. And so of course that just motivates people to throw everything they have at it to try to be that 1 out of 10 person, despite those odds. But enough about that. I'll save all the major details for future stories. With the remaining funds, I used that to pay for a moving van and storage. So the entrance to this storage unit was on a steep incline, and I had to take this Kia and pull a trailer up there full of shit, spinning my wheels the whole time in 3rd gear, fully tense, knowing that I would be jacking this thing if I slid backwards, but we did it. And we went off to Ohio, where it seemed things would be getting better. Seemed. Really, this was all just a brief moment of respite, if you can call it that. We had a small room within a friend's house who was very lenient on rent, so we could try to make some financial straits. I had 3 months before my call center job began, so I settled for a network marketing scheme to fill a gap. That involved door-to-door sales for AT&T U-verse. Looping around neighborhoods all day, knocking on doors until you are either cleared the neighborhood or worked for 8 hours, for no hourly pay, of course. It was either that or nothing, so fuck it, I did it. And I kinda wish I hadn't, but at the same time, it was the only way I got a little extra cash for us. But in retrospect, I wish I didn't. I should have just concentrated on making videos. I would have probably came out just as much richer. Thing is, we were in recovery mode, and I went full on into making videos and art again, on top of working a full-time job with it. The problem ended up being that I was trying to do everything. I was trying to do weekly videos for multiple ideas and not getting any viewership. I was all rose-tinted glasses regarding the experience I had with the insurance job. There was the work ethic, but not the focus behind it. It's almost like a fever dream at this point. A lot of ramen, peanut butter and tuna sandwiches, not at the same time. All of it just comes back to getting a handle on money. Catching up with credit card payments, rent, gas, insurance, car payment. It's incredibly embarrassing to hand off a rent check and then realize the next day you have no funds to cover it, and then you have to stop it. Truth was, one income was not enough to survive on. Even though we had 2 jobs, I was only pulling a few hundred a week. My husband was making a lot better money, but only barely at a livable wage of $20 an hour. I would have been better off getting a part-time job for 3 months instead. There's a lot to skip over. Petty disputes over money we lent to supposed friends, not being able to travel anywhere, making the shittiest videos I have ever made, spreading across 5 different YouTube channels. The next problem was one of our cars died, again. So now we were left with 1 vehicle, again. It was at this point I got to discover the joys that are the public transportation system. What would take a car around 15 minutes took a bus 2 hours. I couldn't even draw on the bus because strangers would bother the fuck out of me when it came to what I was drawing. Or could I draw this? Could you draw Mickey Mouse? Could I draw Mickey Mouse? Fuck your Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse gets fucked in the ass. You don't want to be rude, so I just sat there and often played a game or wrote some script for a video that may or may not get made. Had to pay attention though, else I would miss my stop. By the time I got home from work, with another 2-hour plus ride, it was past midnight, so it was off to bed.
One of the worst moments though I had at the bus was forgetting to go on the right one. How it worked was that at 10 p.m. when I got out of work, I had to immediately get to the bus stop to not miss the last bus arriving to Columbus. I had no time to dilly-dally. I had to get there right away to catch it. And once in Columbus, there's 1 chance to get on the right bus. Otherwise, you have to be waiting there until 8 a.m. before the next one arrives. So I got on the wrong one, the opposite direction I'm supposed to be going. And about 1/3 of the way there, I realized my mistake and panicked and talked to the bus driver who directed me to talk to the manager of Coda, the bus service. Unfortunately, my cell phone wasn't working, or I didn't pay the bill, one or the other, or just didn't have a signal. So I had to borrow another person's cell phone that happened to be on the bus. That was nice of them. What wasn't nice though is I had people yelling at me how it was not their problem that I got on the wrong one, that they had work in the morning too, and it's not their fault that I got on the wrong bus, and I'm holding up everyone else. So yeah, thanks for the motivation, assholes. Like I'm supposed to just step out and take a 8-hour walk home, right? Fucker. Anywho, I got a hold of one of the Coda managers and they took me home. So I made a note to never let that happen ever again, because that was a fucking nightmare, and thinking about that time makes me want to gouge out my own eyes.
It was not even a year before we ended up finding a place of our own so we could move out of the closet that was our room. I'm always going to be thankful for the leniency we got from that friend that took us in. However, our near tipping point would happen within the same year. Within the week, actually, of leaving. There was an accident. The brake line on our STI Subaru broke and the car was totaled on the road. Luckily, my husband and the passenger sustained no injuries. This is what it looked like afterwards. Nonetheless, we already paid for the apartment lease and took what little stuff we brought down to the new home where the buses don't run. It was also the same week we were going to Anthrocon, and people were relying on us to pay for a room share. So the hotel share was already paid for. It's not like we can cancel it and screw over our friends at the same time. We figured that afterwards we could recover, get a new car loan in my name, and start building up from there. Husband even had a new contract. Our new place was a 1-bedroom apartment. All of our furniture was in storage, so the only thing we had was an air mattress, some silverware, and our computer sitting on top of boxes. This would be life for the next year and a half.
I had these since 1997. 17 years old now, and they still fucking work.
Neshoba was on contract jobs during one week when he clocked out to catch the bus home. They told him that he was doing good, and that there may be a permanent position opened up for him. Funny thing is, they all say that. That same week, his contract was ended early, abruptly. They said it wasn't working out. He wasn't a good fit after he left. After a day before, they said he was doing fine. They cut him loose.
I get what I'm about to say is just a feeling, but I'm pretty sure it's because he was taking the bus home and we didn't have a permanent vehicle yet. They knew he was taking the bus. And the reasoning comes from the fact that when I worked at Blockbuster, if there was a potential employee who took the bus to work, no hire, straight in the trash for that application. This is one of those things where the employer would definitely not say it out loud because that'll make them liable. But being that his hours had to be negotiated and tied around the bus route because there was only one time the bus would come by to take him home, I just get the strange feeling that they cut him loose so early, mainly because of that factor. But that's just a feeling.
So now, the same week we move in, we have no car, the buses don't run in that area, and my husband's contract was ended. So now we only have my income from the call center, $12 an hour. My husband took every opportunity we had with the rental car to go to interviews for places that would misrepresent themselves often. You would go into an interview thinking that this is going to be a regular job, only to find out it's yet another network marketing company. Seriously, I don't know if it's just because of the Columbus area, but those places seemed like a plague, trying to capture in as many people with their tentacles as possible. It was about a month before another contract was landed. We were at this point having no vehicle. We had to get up at 6 a.m. to get ready and walk the 20 minutes to catch the one and only bus that would come by to take my husband to work. The bus stop was actually scheduled to be removed from that route system several months later, so the clock was ticking on that. I would have to take the 2-hour walk from home to the call center, work until 10 p.m., and then take the 2-hour walk back home. Again, we were stuck in this cycle of barely seeing each other outside of the weekends.
So whether it was rain or shine, if I wanted to get anywhere, I had to walk to it. So I ended up getting wet a few times. Coming to work, soaked. Coming to the grocery store to get groceries, and then walking home halfway there, the rain starts, and here I am standing underneath an awning waiting for the rain to end, and then getting frustrated after about an hour and walking home with 2 bagfuls of groceries and completely soaked clothing.
One night, the air mattress broke and I had to walk an hour and a half to Meijer and carry one back at 3 a.m. Not much sleep that night.
The walks to work were, again, about 2 hours, and a lot of the times there was no sidewalk to walk on. So here I am at the side of the road trying to navigate between either falling into a ditch or possibly getting hit by a car. Occasionally I did get rides there, which was helpful. Some random stranger would pick me up. I remember one gentleman was in a Ford F-150 pickup, letting me know,
Yeah, I see you walking there. I know you're probably a liberal, but I know you ain't anti-human. I know none of us are really anti-human despite our differences. But yeah, it's a good thing you're going to work and making your way forward.
I don't know what gave me away. Is it my hair? Is it my hair? Is it the fact that I weigh 150 pounds? But hey, I ain't anywhere near a liberal, but hey, that's getting off track. I did one time encounter a ferret. That's not something you see every day. I just saw that thing rolling around the grass. I walked up to it and did nothing but want to climb up on top of me. I was right in front of a nature park, so I just had to hand it off to the manager there, or one of the managers there. Wish I could have afforded to take him home and take care of him, but that's just how it goes. I also did get a free winter coat. I was at a intersection and this lady rolls down her window. Hey, sweetie, I see you walking every day here. Can I bless you with this coat? That's kind of how she sounded, yeah. I'm like, yeah, and I took the coat and I got a free winter coat. It was a little big, but it's warm, so I don't care.
There were so many times that I came in late to work before and during this because the bus would either break down, or I slept in too late, or I had to take time off in order to cash in my check and prevent overdraft fees, that I could have gotten fired. I was late so many times that they had the option to fire me. I knew that my face must have turned white as a ghost when my current manager threw down my attendance record with the phrase termination on top of the paper. The only thing I could do was promise that it would stop and that would make up for this. Luckily, I didn't have to travel far anymore to cash in my paychecks, and the time we got up gave me plenty of time to ensure I was no longer late. So many things in place to keep you down when you are poor. The call center cafeteria was extremely overpriced. Snacks were a luxury. We had 2 incomes again, but our hole was still pretty deep to climb out of. There was a cycle of payday loans. Take out $500 for 2 weeks, come back, pay $530 back to take out another $500 loan. One night our meal was bread and some tomato paste we happened to have hung on for a while. The contract my husband was working had management that would find joy reminding him and other contractors how easily they could be cut off if they were late or call in sick. You had no options for days off. You had to practically beg for that.
The one time I interacted directly with one of my husband's managers was when he was early in the contracting phase and participating in the team building bullshit that they encourage you to participate in order to worm your way into a permanent position. Going to little work meetings and work events after the work hour, like the bar. So he went to the bar, and my husband's manager sees me. I introduce myself, and then he turns to my husband and says,
Wow, I thought you were being gay just for attention.
That statement just boggles me. You're just pretending to be gay for attention? When does that happen? How does that happen? Who's ever done that? Was it him? Was this projection? Is he just bisexual in denial and decided he was just going to pretend to be gay one day, according to him, in his own view? I don't know. It just seems like a weird fucking thing to say to someone, right? It's a weird fucking thing to think. But you know, if me and my husband reacted poorly around that time he said that, that would just prime him to cancel the contract outright. You can do that. And then word would get back to the contracting company, and it would just be that much harder to find any kind of work.
We were also paying a friend to take my husband home from the job, $30 a week, because walking was out of the question, making it over 4 hours. There was very little time to do anything we wanted. Walking was the only way to get anywhere. Ubering or lifting our way there and back would have just added up too much. We managed to scrounge up enough funds for a Honda Accord at $1,200. I still don't manage how we did it. We were completely broke right afterwards. That car is a story in itself, but to cover it quickly, the transmission failed within the first week. We paid the seller to get a new one for $200, but that one got stolen. I seriously doubt it, but in my position, can't really call him out as a liar. Paid for another one and got the car operating right before the heavy winter storms hit. The walking would happen off and on. There were many times my husband would get overtime, but then came the time to finally get our stuff. Our final major trial.
Again, I have to mention that we were living on one air mattress and using boxes to hold up our computers, and that's it. That's all we really had. The major reason to get all our stuff out of storage was that we were paying $130 a month to keep it there. And there were occasions where I had to cancel a check and let them know that I did. And they did indeed threaten to kick us out over that. Which, of course, all I could say is, I understand you're running a business, but I do get it. I'm not gonna undermine the fact that having some customer call in and say to cancel a check they just mailed you and have you keep up with that shouldn't be your problem, right? But that was $130 that we could definitely use in our situation.
My work pay was complicated. You see, the call center I worked at was for a bank, the same bank that had my account forcibly closed due to sizable overdrafts. They were paid off, but they could not direct deposit my check to any other bank account, and they refused to reopen a new account under my name because of those past experiences with the overdrafts. I had to wait for my check in the mail, and sometimes it didn't come when expected. This was one of those times it didn't come. My husband took the only day he could off so we could drive to Michigan and get all our shit out of storage. I had to make a risky decision, so I overdrew my account $500. the maximum it could go. The most it would let you take out at once. I would later have that account closed, leading me to live with no bank account for the next 3 years.
I would then have to take my checks to the bank I worked for and pay the fee of $5 to have my paycheck cashed out. It was mainly because I did not want to risk having a joint account with my husband, because if collections came after me or collections came after my husband for his student loans, how that works is it doesn't matter whose money's who. If both your names are on that account, they'll take the money forcibly out, period.
We already had the moving van reserved up north, so our combined incomes, we were ready. We rented a car knowing that the Honda Accord would never make the trip. A 6-hour drive that day to my husband's parents' house so we could sleep. Next day, we made brief visits to our past friends at War Games North to pick up our bookshelves. Another friend's house who was holding onto a dresser that had all my comics, but more importantly, my Berserk collection. After paying $530 to get the damn moving van, we loaded it up with all our stuff from storage. Tables, chairs, game systems, TV stands. That same day, it was another 6-hour trip, down in separate vehicles. By the time we were near the end of our journey back, we were shouting at each other on our phones to try and keep each other awake. Everything had to be timed accordingly because we could not afford the van or the car to be late going back. The final morning was unloading everything ourselves into the apartment. We managed to get a loan for a better car, so at least this time when the shit Accord that loved leaking clutch fluid died, we were able to sell it off and work around having the same hours at our jobs. There were still nights I had to walk home, and there were a lot of personal issues about our relationship that went unchecked. Another half a year and we would free ourselves from the payday loan cycle. There were little bumps here and there with our finances, but for the most part, we finally reached stability in our life.
With this new stable position, my husband especially was able to help me explore my creative endeavors and focus a lot more on that too, in order to improve myself and get better in terms of video editing, commentary, drawing ability, and with his social ability, making connections and getting interviews with people like Frederick Fox, and later hooking up with Malcolm, who helped me do a bunch of videos as well. And without him, without each other, none of this would have been possible. This would eventually lead to our second husband, who's still currently with us. We are a threesome, and I'm at the point now where I'm freelancing, editing for the show
Onion Nuggets.
And done some work with Channel Awesome, things that I never thought would happen, let alone doing this full time and making a full concerted effort to pursue this as my own business. It never would have been possible without my first husband and my second husband. I know this story is long enough as it is. I'll just say for now that we essentially helped each other achieve our dreams and goals in life, and continue to do so to this day, to the point where I'd say if this is a peak, it's a pretty good peak. As far as I'm concerned, I won life, and no matter what happens after this, too late to stop me.
I told a lot of what I had to do to a few of my managers of mine and coworkers. The walking, the waiting on the bus, walking in the cold, walking in the rain. And I'm actually kind of taken back by one saying that this would not have been a job they could keep if they had to do that. That I did it without complaint. That we pulled through when we had the situation of deciding what bill would be late that month. I'd have to ask, what would the alternative been like? Well, the thing is that the answer is easy for me because the alternative was just unacceptable. What would the alternative been like? We could have stayed in Michigan, where we would inevitably be rendered broke because of the network marketing job. Relationships with friends and family would have been strained over our financial failures. What if I gave in to my suicidal thoughts over the course of those years? Thoughts that only I knew of until now. Again, I emphasize there was a lot of luck involved. An example being, if I got into a car accident in Michigan with no insurance, it would have been a $5,000 fine and me losing my driver's license. How would we move out then? There were a lot of hard-learned lessons in those early years of being out on our own. Lessons that could have just as easily taken a turn beyond the point of recovery. And I wonder, with no self-delusion, how many find themselves in similar situations and how many others go beyond a state of recovery. And even then, how many of those situations involve circumstances beyond one's control. Just don't ever stop. Keep moving forward.
I know with this story, I'm not likely to reach a lot of people. There isn't a play on algorithms that control our online viewership this time, and I'll be lucky if 100 people even see this. I think given the time on here creating stuff that I've demonstrated that what really matters to me is that I make something. I make things because I have to.
I know why Dwayne makes art, because he has to. I think that's what it comes down to, really, for any artist. It's a compulsion. You have to. You can't not do it.
Here is a piece of our lives, full on display. I think it is important to share such things with as wide an audience as possible, given the opportunity that we have here with current technology. Because really, there are millions of others out there who are going through similar situations, if not a lot worse. Oftentimes, if they're able to even share their experience, they might not even have the energy to, or rather not relive those experiences. Let's be real. As I said, I'm not here competing with my scars. This is just me sharing something that may be relatable to some people out there. Whoever you may be, if you got some entertainment out of this, or touched you in some way, thank you for stopping by.
Subscribe to the damn channel and share it around. I got a store for art and other creations of mine. Patreon to get some extra perks and also get a store discount. Paws Off gaming channel with a talking weasel. And Weird Source for cringe furry shit you love.